Excuse me. It's a little frightening when you find out that you are history. I have a short history here of the building that we are in. It was built by George M. Curtis in 1902, and it was known as the Curtis Hardware. It was sold in 1907 to his brother Ed Curtis, and in 1921 to I.C. Dillon and Wallace D. Woody, and in 1926 to E.L. McClymont. Then it became the property of the Peonia Hardware Company, which later was known as Biggs and Curtis in Grand Junction, and C.A. Burke. My grandfather and grandmother were working at a little lumber yard in Silt in the 1930s. And they moved here on February the 2nd of 1932 and called it Howard's Cash Hardware. In 1976, my mother and father, George and Helen Hunton, bought the store from my grandmother, because my grandfather had died in 1970 and my grandmother in 1982. They also painted the store red in 1972. And I have a picture of it up here with the dark coat of paint. In 1982, it was sold to the Vieiras, and that's about as much as I'll give you of the actual history of who had owned the store. At one time, all of the wood cabinets in here had been made back east. There's a history of that on in a frame up here too. Who made it and how they shipped it in, and there was no railroad here in 1902. So they brought everything in on wagons. And those were sold, of course, in the 1980s. Not too long ago, my son sent me something on Facebook along with some pictures of the old hardware. And I thought I'd share that with you too, because those of us who remember walking into that building, this building, when it had all the old hardware, I thought it was huge. And it wasn't very big, was it? The smells were a distinct part of the experience, from the aromatic richness of the leather saddles to the bitter bite of the bucket of penny nails, the mustiness of the basement to the hot iron loading dock in the summer, the floors that would creak and moan, the coarseness of the rope in the floor as it was drawn up from below, the elevator that would take me and my dog Hiccup a bit too high. The store looked very different from the vantage point of the rising elevator just before disappearing into the sanctitude of Great-Grandma's apartment upstairs. Even the press of the metal keys of the cash register and the glow of Granddad's lamp at his desk made up a distinct part. I think I can even remember the feel of his ledgers. Bait, tackle boxes, worms, rods and reels. I am sure my first pocket knife is from there too. The memories still thundered through, sometimes as if I hadn't stepped away for a day or more. My grandparents lived in the apartment upstairs forever, I thought. And in fact, my parents and I lived up there until 1941. And for a short term of time, we were in Utah and came back to the hardware. And we have lived here ever since. Somebody in the family has. But I remember my dad loved the customers, and he especially loved hunting season because we had so many from out of town come in. And he always had a big box of apples that he shared with the hunters. And they remembered that, and they would come back every year and they'd look for the apples first. I think we all knew one another by our first names in the stores on this main street. We did have stores that changed ownership, but we still knew the people and we knew their kids. And most of us went, like we said, we went all the way through school together. So there were deep roots with those first people who came into the town. I can't think of anything else right now. I'll let somebody else.
Thanks, Myrna.